Alrighty. Hello, everybody. Welcome to get back in the driver's seat, creating systems and changes that stick. As everyone starts to join and to get into the groove, there is a poll that's about to pop up on your screen. Let us know what you're hoping to learn today. Go ahead and answer that for us. It's always really great for us to learn what you're here for. While we give it a few minutes that everyone's answering there, just a bit of housekeeping to keep today's session run smoothly. Recording. Today's webinar is being recorded. A copy of the recording and slides will be shared with all registrants after the session. Audio and video. Attendees, you are automatically muted. Cameras are off. This helps us to minimize background noise and distractions. There's two ways to talk to us. Q&A down the bottom, you'll just see it there. We encourage your questions. Please submit at any time using the Q&A box. We'll address as many as we can during the Q&A portion at the end. And then there's also the chat option. The chat is separate from Q&A and open for just general comments and thoughts. So why not test it out right now and let us know where you are signing in from today. We'd love to see where you guys are at. And now let me introduce our amazing speakers today. We've got Jason Drews, our Senior Director of Customer Enablement at LMN. For nearly a decade, Jason Drews has helped landscape pros unlock the full value of LMN. He leads with a focus on customer success, simplifying operations, boosting profits, and driving impact. We have also got Jason New, the founding principal at McFarland Stanford. With 20 plus years in green industry ops, Jason helps landscape owners build accountable teams, tighten financials, and scale profitably. As an executive coach and ACE peer group leader, he's known for practical playbooks, clear metrics, and results that stick. Jason and Jason, we are so grateful to have you today. Over to you both.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lydia. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Just going to go through here and get started. So today we're going to be covering creating systems and changes that stick. Great to see some engagement in the poll there. Looks like a lot of people want to learn how to create a plan that's going to help you accomplish those things and find out what metrics to track. So that's great. If you've ever felt like your team is working hard, but your margins, cash flow, operations, those things aren't maybe reflecting the effort that you're putting in, you're in the right place. So today we're going to zero in on why those changes often stall and how you can make it stick with clarity, accountability, and some simple scoreboards that your team can rally around. So we're going to start with honing in on why companies often get stuck. By understanding the why, you're in a better position to avoid those common pitfalls that people tend to find themselves in. And we want this to be interactive, like Lydia mentioned, so feel free to drop those questions in the Q&A. We'll do our best to tackle as many as we can, but if we don't get to it, we will follow up after the webinar. So also, I'll point out the obvious. Yes, we're both Jason, so it might get a little confusing. Jason squared today, but Jason, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks for the intro, and Lydia, thank you for the great making sure we're known and what this is about. And so today we're going to cover a lot of bases. And so one of the things that I find as we start diving into this, there's going to be a lot of information, slides are going to get busy, but really we're going to talk about, as we start getting through the meat of this, how to hone in on details that matter and the things that will make a difference for you. And so we start with the obvious. And so as a baseline for us to get to where we get going is the clarity side of things. Our transparency and financials and the way that we present this throughout our entire teams is so key. And so what we find with companies that tend to get stuck, one is there's not a lot of accuracy, transparency in the numbers that they're not only looking at themselves, but their middle management, their entry-level managers that are responsible for performing some tasks don't really get a chance to see it. They don't understand it. And we don't really visit this very much. And so we're going to talk about how to do that today. We're going to go through this great example of money falling out of the back of a truck that we get to, AI can do so many things. This was a fun one example, but the idea is like sometimes we don't know where it's falling out of the back. And so this is an idea of like, okay, as we start looking at numbers, it's going to show us where that trail is coming from. And so if you want to, Jason, dive into the next slide, we're going to keep moving forward. Another part of the clarity is training. There's so many people that don't understand how to read financials, the glossary of terms, the terminology behind it. And so when you look at a profit and loss or an income statement, a cost of goods sold, what does that mean for someone? Where is it coming from? Gross profit margin. How do we get to a gross profit margin? Overhead, net profit. One of the best examples, you see some pennies up on the middle of the screen where there's a visual. One of the best examples I see a company go through this, we've done this exercise in a company retreat at one time, where they go through a full profit and loss and they go, hey, we want to land at 12% net profit for the year. Well, 12% net profit for the year, when you hear that and you're not used to reading financials, you don't know where that's coming from. You don't know what it means. And so they use this example of, how about 12 pennies? Hey, we're going to start with 100 pennies. And 100 pennies, we're going to know we got to pay labor. And so labor is a portion of that. So we got to take X number of pennies that go to pay people to do the work. Then we have pennies that go to the materials that we buy. X number of pennies go to the materials we buy. Then we have maybe some subcontractors involved. Then we potentially have some overhead items like insurance, vehicles, things that are captured in what we need to pay for to run the business. At the end of that, we're left with 12 pennies. And with 12 pennies, that we know we have a healthy business that we're running, that's what we are aiming for the end of the year. But the reality of it, so many things that challenge us throughout the year, we may lose a penny here, a penny there, where we're landed with 3 pennies left at the end of the year. And this team, when we went through this exercise, when we named some of the things that we had issues with in the past year, we're so amazed with how quickly the money just ran out the door because we weren't aware of what was going on and they didn't see this before. You may see the Busch Light next to it, the 12 pack. Another company used, which is now leaning to be one of my favorites, is they cared more about pouring beer out than they did the penny situation. So out of pouring a beer out, hey, we lost a beer based on this percentage point. People were like, wait, why are you pouring the beer out? That's not fun. And so as the team was rallying around understanding financials, they'd pour a beer out for everything that caused them to lose money that year and showing from the 12 pack or the 12 pennies going down to 3, and you pour out what's remaining. You're like, wow, I can't believe how wasteful that was or how we could have prevented that. So it was a great training exercise for people to understand how financials play a bigger part in what we share at the end of the day. And
I think that's,
go ahead, Jason.
yeah, I was gonna say that's such a great point just for the clarity for the teams that may not have that financial background to really understand what net profit is or why it matters. On the LMN side, we've done crew budgets before because if you put yourself in a crew member's shoe, they might know what you charge per hour to your client, and they know how much they make per hour, but they don't know the in between of all the other costs that are involved that you outlined. And so, giving them a really simple example, whether it's pennies or pouring out Busch Light, great tool that you can do to really simplify it for your teams.
Well, and that's one of the things that people remember, right? When we refer back to things, hey, do you remember the exercise with the Busch Light and we had to pour the beers out? We're leaning into pouring out 2 beers right now with what we're facing. And so how do we prevent that from happening? How do we get ahead of it?
That's great.
Yep. And third really is setting clear expectations of understanding what good is. We have worked for years in the industry as far as in the day-to-day. And so my background is in the day-to-day of working in landscaping, interior plants and floral, lawn care, all sorts of things that I've had experiences with. Or in the last 10 years of McFarland Stanford, where we've been working with people in a coaching and educational capacity, we are seeing so many great ways to present this and for people to understand it. But the idea would be, we keep finding number 3 reason we aren't setting clear expectations. They don't know what good is. And so as an industry, we've got to start tapping into our network and understanding as an industry, how do we measure our companies, and then actually explaining that and clearly showcasing that to our team, to be able to say this is exactly what we're expecting and what good is, so that we can get to it, that we can help all of us work towards those goals. And so we've written sales goals per month. I think people get naturally into that. Hey, what are our sales? What are our sales for the year? But we may not be tracking it, or we may not know what good is. We have cost management exercises where we need to reduce, things where you spoke about this earlier, Jason, when you're saying, our crew hours, our budgeted hours, and things of that nature. We start looking at ways to track how we're doing according to estimating and how we're performing. Well, if we're not looking at this or setting clear expectations on what good is, it really doesn't give anyone the motivation to make things better, because we're already working hard. I was guilty of this, by the way. For me, it was early on in management, it was, let's just work faster. Who's been there, right? If we just work longer days and we work faster, we're going to do better, right? That's just overall a better recipe. But we still had no overarching goal. We had no clear expectations, and we didn't really know how to measure ourselves in a meaningful way, in the ways that we realized would impact our financials for the positive. And so we've listed a few things here that we'll be covering today in more detail. And, this is a small example, this picture here of some of our outsourced accounting team. When we work with clients, this is some of the displays and the ways we present information to show where things potentially are issues, where the trend is going, what areas we want to focus on to help people see this more clearly. But that's the goal, is to make sure your team sees this more clearly and knows where to go.
And just further to what you were mentioning earlier, not only can they see it easily and it's readily available, but they understand it and know what it means and know what to action if your sales goal isn't what you want it to be, or you're not trending towards that goal, or your net profit is a bit lower than what you want. So that training piece that you mentioned earlier is definitely a major component to not just showing the numbers, but understanding and making it stick.
Yes. So as we're talking about the three things we talk about are the most impactful, or that we see really we get stuck on, or why companies get stuck, some of the more granular details of red flags that are maybe not so numbers driven, but really just indicators that we don't have things put in place yet. So our systems and processes, right? So we've covered the operational planning side of things. LMN does this great boot camp, and also does this great exercise around putting your operational planning in place, your budgets for the year. It's impactful. It's huge, because we know where we're starting and we know all the cost involved in order to make the profit we want to, be able to achieve for the year. And so when people don't go through the process and they don't have an operational plan or a budget, it's a huge red flag. Huge red flag, because at this point, we're still leaning back on, we don't have clear expectations of where we want to land this ship. And so a purchasing process is a big part of this. So we know where we're ordering materials, we're keeping up to date on our pricing. Our sales to production process, a huge red flag, which is really operational around how we take from sales in any capacity, whether you're doing tree care and you're going out and doing a scope of work for doing any sort of takedowns or pruning, and giving that back to a production team to be able to achieve the scope of work. If we don't have a clear process for that, it could end up anywhere. I mean, our team back in the day has done all sorts of things. We've cut down the wrong tree. We said, here's X that says, do not cut this tree down. Somehow we didn't have a process in place, and X marks the spot to cut the tree down. So they cut that tree down, right? So
I know you're not alone there. Don't worry.
So we've been through plenty of examples like this. And then contract renewals, of course, as we start looking at this, is sometimes we've gone into companies where they haven't renewed pricing for their recurring services for years. So there really is no effort or thought process into how we make sure we're keeping up with inflation, how we make sure we're taking care of our team with pay raises to support the continued quality we want to deliver and the growth that's needed. And so these contract renewals. So these are just some items that we got to make sure we're paying attention to and that we have a good plan around.
I would just add too, I mean, like having a budget obviously super important. All these processes super important. But giving yourself enough time to properly plan and strategize for all these things. um, giving yourself time to think through, what is your sales goal for next year, and how are you going to get there, right? Like, what if something changes seasonally? What if you lose a key person, right? Like having contingency plans, giving yourself the time to really focus on your budget,
Hmm.
um, uh, it's going to make sure that it's a much more thought out, well constructed plan that you can rely on. And for other processes that you might be doing, I just know from experience working with LMN customers, sometimes, as owners or leaders, you can get caught up and you have the best intention of putting an SOP in place, but you do it in a silo. Share your processes with your team. If you come up with a new sales production so that you don't drop the ball on customer expectations, run it by everyone on your team, right? Have them poke holes in it. Like, where can this fail? And your team will know, like your team lives it every day, and they'll help you make it, take it from good to great. So that would just be my advice. Get the team involved early and give yourself enough time to properly plan for these.
Absolutely. We're as you start going through this, the processes that you build, if you do it alone, it can only reach so many people. And that's where it also doesn't get clearly communicated to everyone involved. So the buy-in is not there. The conversation stops with the owner normally, or with the person creating the process. It doesn't carry on for very far beyond that. And it's hard to implement and get started. So when you bring people involved and have a structure to that, I so agree with you, Jason. So you get to the point where these things become easier, and the buy-in and the adoption of, implementing these things when you get people involved are so much easier.
And as far as the boot camp goes, this is live training, in-person training that Element is hosting. If you are an Element customer, we'll send out details to Element customers after this, but just a way that, force yourself, get in a seat in person with a facilitator to give yourself enough time to, work on your budget, work on your systems. All
All
right,
right. So we've covered systems and process. I love what you did here. I'm sorry, go for it.
No, I'll let you, metrics and profits. So I'll let you jump in
Oh,
here.
yeah, I'm sorry, I get excited, so I might jump in. So Jason, just like, yeah, as we go through metrics and profits, our financial dashboards, our operational dashboards, the things that we're building for ourselves to really keep us on track are huge. And what I love to see a part of this is labor percentage of sales. You have probably seen show up a few times now on our slides. It's one of the biggest indicators, because as we're selling landscape projects or tree work or any services, really, a major component of that is the labor it takes for us to produce the work. And so that's why it's such a big indicator in how we're managing our business, is to know where we stand at all times, and how we're performing towards that. And so we look at efficiency ratings as one of those key moments. And if you look over at this dashboard, I'll point to that. And then Jason, maybe you can cover some of the other pieces here. But I see we're looking at labor as showing a cost, 11.2K. Below that is 10.97. And there's a 2% difference, right? A 2% delta. Is that good or bad? Like, we have to know the answer to this, and we have to know where we stand. And the idea would be, we know our efficiency rating on what we're spending to get the work done is landing right where we budget it to be, or better. And so here, we're estimated at 10.97, but we spent 11.2. So 11,000, we've budgeted 10.9, and we spent 11.2. We're at 2% over budget on what we needed for labor, right? That's not going to help us really drive the profitability that we want to have. And so that's going to drive better questions and conversations on how we're either estimating that job, or how we're working with the crew to be more efficient.
And I think, later in the presentation, we're going to go through like building a plan for a change. So here, there's a lot of great metrics listed here: labor as a percentage of sales, efficiency rating, all these things. Just to give you an idea of what are some of these things that you can start tracking. We'll definitely go into it in a little bit more detail as well on an upcoming slide. Because all these things can erode your profit, and they can do it really quickly. So if you're not tracking these ones. I'm sure a lot of you track things like warranty, but can you actually put a dollar amount to it, or do you track, by crew, by division? Lots of things that you can dive into on this, on these numbers and these metrics. But we'll circle back around shortly on those.
Absolutely.
So
People. Yep.
people, yeah, I'll take this one. So I mean, as far as like metrics, indicators to watch for good health, like people obviously play a huge role in in all everyone's companies. And so I've spoken with a lot of companies that maybe have higher turnover than what they like or would like to have. Um, there's a lot of things that you can look for in your business as indicators for maybe what's going wrong or what could be improved there. Training schedule, how often are you training? Is it a regular occurrence? What's the mood like when you're doing training, right? Like, how are people responding to it? Turnover would be an obvious one. If you're constantly having to rehire or hire new staff, the overhead toll that can take, on you as a leader, constantly hiring, or on your department leaders, um, is a huge impact. And so, um, if you're not doing proper training and it's not a priority, that can easily contribute to a higher turnover. So on the right there, that's from our Greenius program, which is not just a safety training program, Greenius. It's really a tool to help you upskill your staff and create a culture of career development around learning and growth. And so those, having a career development program in your business, um, just shows your employees, one, that you care about, their well-being and that there's growth potential for them.
Mm-hmm.
But it also, puts in a culture of that growth mentality, and you're showing your employees that safety is a priority. So those things, if you're tracking something like turnover and you do start training, whether it's through Greenius or any other system, or your own, you'll see, I'm sure, like impacts to your turnover ratio and like how often you're hiring and how much you're spending, um, month to month, year to year on hiring employees.
Well, and something to relate to that for me was I grew up playing sports. Sports is, was big in my life. It's my kids' lives as well. And so a bigger part of this was like, okay, some of the best coaches on the planet take time to invest back in their team and show them the skill sets they need, help them work on the skill sets they need, and really give them a path to be a better player, right? And so if we look at this, if you take it to an NFL program and you look at some of the quarterbacks out there, and Tom Brady is, greatest of all time, debatable, right? But he's greatest of all time quarterback. You know, did he have a close relationship with Belichick as far as the conversations they had, the training that was necessary for him to become one of the greatest players? And do you think the time was invested, the money was invested to make that happen? Yes. He was also paid hundreds of millions of dollars. The challenge I think we look at ourselves is we don't take the time for training because we feel like we don't have the time, or maybe we don't take the money to invest in this. But the reality of this is, if we were to look at some of the team members that we've got as if they were players on an NFL team and you were the coach, you have to invest in that team for it to win, or you're going to struggle. And this is a big part of that. So I was a big fan of this, Chase. I'm glad you put this together. And this obviously is a screenshot from Greenius on just tracking and showcasing a path for somebody to go through to be able to get better at what they do for the company.
And I mean, segueing from the sports plug there, I mean, every good change starts with knowing your numbers. I always say, like, everyone has the intention of doing well. No one goes to work every day. They don't come home to their spouse like, "Hey, I did terrible today." Their spouse is like, "Hey, great job." That it just, no one really has that intention. They want to do well. You need to give them the tools to know that they're doing well and performing well. If you can't see, then you don't know. And so it's like, to bring it back to sports, if you've got two teams playing against each other and one of them knows the score and the other one doesn't, which one do you think is really going to try harder, right? I would bet on the team that knows the score is going to push harder and try harder than the team that doesn't know the score. Human nature is just competitive. Yeah, or humans are competitive in nature. And so by providing the score or the information they need to know how well they're performing, super important to driving the performance that you want.
And I'm a big fan of actually showcasing this across a group. So there's a lot of methods to this, a lot of sometimes reservations, but we've seen companies who really have embraced this openness, the transparency around sharing things, and it doesn't become a poke in the eyes. That's not the intent behind this. This becomes a friendly, competitive environment where we're going to learn from each other, we're going to challenge each other, and we're going to be able to broadcast something that we can actually be excited about and celebrate at some point. So I'm a big fan of showing crew score by crew and displaying it in your shop so everyone can see, and showing us where we are from day to day, week to week, and if we're on track to where we need to be.
Sales, your salespeople, if you've got multiple sales reps are competitive. Put a dashboard up in your office, sales close for the quarter, and watch the competition evolve from there. Like as a sales reps would be another one that I've seen landscapers doing in the office, showcasing the goal across all the sales reps can really make a big impact.
By the way, you'll see people fight back for the numbers, which is what you want. You're like, no, that's not right. That can't be right. I'm not over budget by that much. And you're like, all of a sudden you're like, okay, you care, because nobody wants to feel like they're losing. So ultimately you're driving someone that cares about what the numbers say, and then we can work with that person. So that's exactly what you want.
It creates conversation. What are they doing that I'm not, right? Like, how can I improve? So it's a great tool to have. So, well, that brings us to part two. So now that we kind of understand the why, we're going to get into a little bit more detail on some of those metrics that we've talked about so far. And I think we've got a poll set up here. So interested to know what's important to everyone, like what financial are you tracking regularly? What's your North Star? We've got gross margin, net profits, revenue per hour, labor as a percentage of revenue, cash flow, all the above, lots of all the above. That's great. Some just gross margin, net profit. That's good too. All right. So we'll give that a minute, but it looks like a lot of people tracking all the above. That's good to see. So we've got some benchmarks here. Jason, you want to go through
Love that.
some of these benchmarks that you guys see over at McFarland?
Absolutely. We run peer groups, and for us, a peer group where you have 12 to 15 companies in a peer group that allow us to work with one another, to share numbers, to share our struggles, to share our challenges, and to look at these things. Now, I'm sure there's going to be a ton of questions about this, and probably a lot of things you can go, well, not me. This doesn't apply to me. So we've looked across 247 active members. Okay, so this is a sample of 247 active members who are going through the same things you're going through. So there may be some nuances to what you're seeing that might be unique to you, but overall, these are some targets that the industry is seeing that would say is a good target for you. And what we found is commercially, as you're going into the installation, maintenance, enhancements, we look at this as a gross profit margin. And a gross profit margin, this tells us if we're on track or off track. If we're not hitting these targets, there's room for improvement. And there's a lot of variations in how we're going to find where there is room for improvement, where we're going to dive into our estimating and pricing, right? Our hourly rates, looking at the sideline of those notes, material markups, overtime. Do we have overtime? Is it killing our profitability there and our time there? Equipment that's involved, right? As we start looking at the equipment recovery that's baked into our labor burden to be able to support this inflation, have we raised prices to cover those things? Indirect time, the things that are non-billable, are we covering those things? And you start looking at that, what we find more often is that we haven't delved into this enough. And so our numbers are not accurate, and we're not able to hit the targets because we haven't spent the time, not you as an owner or you by yourself, but with your team, to collectively understand this together. and to make sure we're all talking the same language. And so there's some targets, and please put your hand up if you, at the end of this, we're going to ask you if you want to hear more from McFarland Stanford. We have rates on everything that we track. I am happy to walk through things with you, have a conversation with you around this. So, I think there's a put a hand up, or maybe there will be a Q&A at the end saying, if you're interested in hearing from us, please do that. I will talk you through this. I'm happy to meet with you, talk you through this, and share with you how we came up with these numbers. But the reality of it is, we started being, able to use this as a way of knowing our financials are on track. And we can share this with the team. So this is what the industry is doing as a whole. And here's our target. And if we're below this, then we have some things we can work on. And it's not pointing the finger at one person. It's not pointing the finger at you've been doing it wrong this whole time. It's just something for us to collectively talk about that we can work on together. So it becomes a learning experience. And it also is a huge way to get people rallied around making change, making positive changes. And so we also have this for net profit. We have this for the way that we look at as labor as a percentage of materials, or labor as a percentage of revenue, materials as a percentage of revenue, all those metrics that we said before. We have standards on and industry benchmarks to help you. So having said that, these are some of what I love about this. I know we started with commercial, we did residential. So many companies are a blend of those, which is fine and great, but knowing where the higher margins are helps you plan for having cash flow and having the profitability that you truly want to have at the end of the day. When you have an overhead number that you're trying to hit, and these are the numbers you have to produce as far as being able to be a healthy company. And so I look at lawn care, tree care, and snow. It makes me only want to do those things, but we realize, some of us do all of these things. So it's just knowing those numbers along the way.
And I'll add, we'll have a poll at the end of the presentation where you can check off that you want to get more information on this. So stay tuned for that shortly.
Yep. So perfect. Looking at the financial side, looking at account receivable days, we find this is also where you may have this under control, but we don't necessarily have account receivable days talked about in enough companies, and knowing this is how we're going to help us drive some better cash flow in our companies. So we find a couple of things. These are tied together. When we run a company and we're growing and we're adding new team members and we're adding materials, we're paying for jobs, we need good cash flow. Good cash flow allows us to have the amount of money for us to cover payroll and everything else that we're talking about. The receivables is when we build a job. I'm assuming or hoping that we build this immediately after jobs are completed. Or if you're in maintenance, I hope you're billing at the front end of the month, not the end of the month. That's going to improve our cash flow. Even collections is a big deal. So we believe that if you're over 30 days on AR days, then that is already something we can work on. We have some of our peer group members, ACE peer groups, that are at 15 days, 12 days, even commercial companies, commercial services at 25 days. So it's getting to a point where knowing this game is going to help you and understanding how to get to it. So having strong collection processes, credit card processing, things that will help expedite money getting into your hands will help you run the business better without going into a line of credit, without going into extending loans and getting to a point where you feel that pinch if in a month that you might be slow. And so we track this, and our outsourced accounting teams help companies through this and be able to showcase this and know where we are from month to month. But even more than that, it's live data. Like, we track this daily. So we know where we are every single day of the week. And so there are live financials that we can make sure that we're paying attention to, and you as a business know where you are on cash flow. And that's a bigger part of how to be successful and make sure your business is healthy.
And Jason, I guess just generally speaking, I know it can change based on someone's risk tolerance. But is there like a benchmark you typically recommend for how many months out they should be aiming for cash flow?
It's funny, we get the question a lot. Thanks for bringing that up. It's, until you get to a point where the banks get involved, you really don't know what they're looking for. So it's your own personal risk that you're comfortable with. And some people want it longer as far as number of months that they have a reserve of cash to be able to cover their overhead and how they run the company. But working capital, investment banking, if you're going to go try to buy a company or sell a company and you get investment banks involved, they're going to look for 2 months, 60 days of working capital, which means 2 months of payroll, rent, insurance, overhead that it may be mentioned that you're committed to, plus whatever I didn't mention that it takes to run your company for 2 months if you had no sales. So you need at least 2 months to be considered a healthy company. And there's a lot of ways to get there. Receivables happens to be one of the primary ways. Contracted recurring services is another way. A lot of people are doing snow or mowing services as a la carte billing, where we've had success transitioning some of those clients into a contract or retention type of product where they can bill monthly for a flat rate that covers a scope of services or a commitment, so that we have better cash flow every single month with the services we're offering with a flat rate. And so just some other things to approach and to consider there. And if you're not there, we can always help you just dive into understanding what your cash flow is. And that's where our team can come in and help.
Great. Awesome.
Yep.
All right. So just more on that, numbers are the storyline of your business, right? The goal here is to get clarity. If you don't have access to some of the things that we've shown you so far, step one, obviously, is to work with your bookkeeper, work with your internal teams, try to get what you can with the data and systems that you do have, because really it's going to give you confidence in your decision making when you know your numbers. But the one point I really want to stress is like numbers aren't the end goal. You want numbers, obviously, but it's the conversations, it's the decisions that you can make from the numbers that you're really striving for. So numbers generate the clarity so that you can move to the next point, which is the important planning and decision making. So something to keep in mind. And again, as far as clarity goes, we've mentioned this already before, but just to really nail it home is your teams, owners, everyone needs scoreboards. Like if you don't know the score, you don't know how you're performing. You can't fix what you don't see. So there's, whether it's customer level, job level performance, divisional performance, having easily attainable, accessible metrics that you can pull up is certainly key.
Well, and I think we find, getting back to knowing what good is, this is a great communication tool for helping people understand what good is, right? What is good for our company? And, we can name cash flow. What's good cash flow for a company? We said 2 months. If we don't have 2 months, that becomes a decision like how we're going to handle this and what we're going to do about it. That's the power of bringing your team involved and understanding what we relate to this all the time, but it's like sharing the ulcer. If we're trying to solve these things alone or trying to identify these things alone, we don't bring the management team involved or the people that can really help you make an impact here. We haven't really been able to solve this with the collective thinking of a bigger, smarter audience in our own team. And then we've got to share the ulcer. We got to be able to share what's going on because that's how we're going to solve it faster.
Yeah, and we've spoken a lot about fixing what's going wrong, but it's just as important to know what's going right. So, being able to look at your numbers and like, hey, where are you performing well? Like, let's double down on that area. It's not always about, fixing things that are going wrong, but sometimes you just want to know, where's your niche? Maybe you do one type of work like really well. And I know companies that have stopped doing turf care, for example, and they sub it out. They just weren't efficient at it, right? They didn't have the equipment. They didn't have like the resources, and they did better just subbing that type of service out. So sometimes it's just knowing what you're good at and what maybe you can outsource to a partner.
Well said. I had a similar experience where a gentleman really made me nervous. I couldn't believe he did it, but he was at that time $10 million as a company, and 3 million of that was residential design install, and they just weren't good at it. Like they were struggling there. And he shut it down. Went from 3 million one year to the next year 0. And he was at 7 million in commercial services, maintenance, lawn care, you name it. And then he picked that back up in 2 years. He was back to 10 million on just doing commercial. And it was impressive to see because they focused on really what they were strong at. And like you said, they doubled down, which was impressive to watch.
Yeah, and to me, I would think like how scary that would be, as a business owner making that decision, especially, having the numbers and having that data probably gave them the confidence to be able to make that decision because this probably was not an easy decision to make.
Agreed. Yep.
So we've got this screen back up, keeping score. I promised we'd kind of come back to it a bit. There's a lot of insights that you can, like when you are tracking your numbers, when you do have clarity that you can gather, right? So on this example, whether it's LMN or another system, as long as you can get this information, in this case, you can really dig into it, right? Like labor, we were 2% over on labor compared to what we estimated. So just over here. But when I look at hours, we're 10% less. So we were 10% under on hours, but we went over on labor. So like, why is that, right? Did the estimator put in a different crew? Did they think somebody else would be working that job? Maybe we had to pull in someone more experienced, right? Those are the
You know,
types of,
I was going to
sorry.
say, it looks like that's overtime. It looks
Yeah,
like we did that job on Saturdays and Sundays on overtime. So we beat our budget as far as hours, but we didn't beat our budget as far as cost.
exactly. Could be that too. That's a great point. So there's
Yeah.
lots of little things like that you can kind of dissect with this. Why were we 14% under on materials, right? So, and how maybe you want to replicate that if it's still everything went according to plan. Did we just find another vendor? Did we find like new sourcing of the material? How can we replicate that? Can we use that same vendor for other jobs, right? There's so many things that you can use this information for, in our analytics or in, if you're using another system. It's not the numbers that's the goal. It's these questions that you can ask. It's the decisions that you can make from them that you're really after.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so some tips just before we get into part 3, which is going to be how to make some changes, how to make your changes stick. Just some tips for getting started. So tracking your numbers if you're not already. Based on that poll, it looks like a lot of people tracking some important numbers, about 50% tracking all those numbers. So that's great. But some tips if you're a part of the poll there that aren't tracking many of those right now. Get started with like tracking hours. I know a lot of people when they first start using LMN and you ask how they come up with a price for a job, it's like, well, I just look at the property and I know they've got years of experience at quoting, and they just can look at a property and determine the price in their head, which is amazing. But the problem is when you try to explain that to the rest of your team or to the team that's going to be doing the work, like how do you make it make sense? And so if you can communicate to them, start with hours, how long the job should take. That's one easy way, and then track it, right? So have your team track it again, whether it's through LMN or a different system or a stopwatch. Just start somewhere, right? I'm sure you've got some tips, Jason, on your side too. Anything that you recommend to new clients who are just getting started?
Absolutely. I would say start with a limited number of things that you can measure and track well. One of our most, I would say, when you start this, or if you've done this for a while, we find also it could get too busy. We could have 10 things we're tracking, and it gets to the point where, well, what's the priority? How are we really going to make a difference if we're tracking and 10 things are the priority of what we're looking at and making a difference with? And so we could overwhelm our team, especially early on as we're starting to make traction here. And so the idea would be, let's pick 3. We're going to pick 3 things. And the 3 things that make the difference. And so it might be, though, sales has their 3, operations has their 3, and finance has their 3. So as a category, pick 3. And that allows you to take into it. So labor percentage of sales or budget versus actual, that crew management piece, that's one. That is a one big one. So we definitely want to start with that. And I would say if that one is your biggest one, that's obviously where you're going to notice where training is going to get involved and needed, and coming up with a process, a system, and then someone who owns that. Who's going to own when this number's not good with your team? And I hope it's you that's here on this webinar today. So if you're here today, you're hearing this, that means you have ownership because you heard this. So take this back to your team and allow yourself to go into this and go, okay, how do we change this for the better? So I own these three metrics. I own what it is compared to an industry standard, and how we're going to make some changes with the collective effort of our team and how we want to get started.
Accountability. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We're going to move into part 3. I'll preface with we've got a one slide to cover before we kind of get into what our pen to paper 3-week sprint is. And I'll just set the stage. I mean, a lot of you, I think, we've touched on a lot of metrics already, right? Like things that you can be tracking, whether it's cash flow, accounts receivables, income to labor ratios, efficiency ratings, all kinds of things. So maybe you guys have a good idea if you're watching this on maybe some things that come to mind already that you're thinking about that you'd like to adjust or like to change. And maybe some of you have tried to change it in the past already. I know I've been part of meetings and you get really hyped up and everyone's gung ho. You've got lots of great ideas flowing, and then you leave the meeting and the business just keeps running, right? Everyone's busy. Everyone's just, the phone starts ringing, and you got to run the business, and then, things just die off from there, right?
Yep.
So we want to just create a system of structure so that you don't, lose that momentum, and you drive accountability. So, that was a great segue. And accountability isn't about blame, right? Fairness, clarity. We've talked a lot about clarity, and visibility. That's what we're really wanting to drive home with this.
Also, from a helpful standpoint, if this is new for you or you're not familiar with some of these things, you're just searching for answers, there's lots of resources here through LMN, through McFarland Stanford, through Greenius, but like that's where we come in. We're, not only you guys offer software, but there's this educational platform that you have access to that you can just jump into things like this and go, I could try to do this on my own, or we could get set up the right way on the front end so that when we're set up, we can know what we're doing and it's going to go well. I mean, I wish I had something like this early on when I was going through this in my own career early, and we just didn't. So I ended up going to a local college. I went to SMU here, and I got a class on finance for non-financial managers, and I got a certification of that because I didn't know how to read a profit and loss statement as a landscaper. I mean, I didn't, and I needed the help, and so I went for that. And I think so. What I would say, this accountability is really think about how you can make a contribution. If you're in this webinar today, you can make a contribution by going out and finding out how to do these things, what good looks like, and giving people a chance to kind of work through this process with you.
Awesome. So that takes us to what we're calling the pen to paper, a 3-week sprint. So week 1, it's all about knowing your numbers, right? Setting the baseline. Where are you starting from? What's going on in your business today that might require your attention? So maybe you have this already. We're going to dive into each week a little bit more detail. And like I mentioned at the beginning, we've got a great handout with a little bit more detail on this 3-week sprint and how it works that we're going to send out after this webinar. But the idea is, week 1, understand your numbers. Week 2, we're going to build the plan. How are we going to hold people accountable? How are we going to make sure that it's a success? And then week 3 is all about activating your plan, informing your team, aligning with your team, and setting the plan in motion. So it's 3 weeks. The key word here is focused. So a focused sprint. Jason, you just mentioned it earlier, but I know pretty common knowledge, but as humans, we tend to kind of overestimate how much we can accomplish in a short amount of time and underestimate how much we can accomplish in a long period of time. And so it's really about focusing on 1 to 2 key things, execute on those 1 or 2 things, and then move on to the next. So short sprints, build momentum, execute, and move on to the next. So if you start, if like you do what you mentioned, try and tackle 10 things at once, right? That's where plans tend to, go awry. So,
Well, I'm just thinking out loud. You're like, well, what am I going to start with? And I'll put some thought to this. By the end of this, I want to give you some idea of like if I was in sales or in operations or in finance, what are the 3 things I would start with? So I'll give some insight to that as we start, as we get to the end.
yeah, and I think, week 1, know your numbers here. Again, so some of these are suggestions, right? So review margins on billable time. You might already have an idea of what needs to be reviewed, right? Maybe, and I can use unbillable time as an example here. I think it's one, or non-billable time, shop time, any time that you're not billing to a client. But there's other things here too. We're just trying to give you some ideas of what you can focus on. It could be contract renewals, but week 1, understanding your numbers, build a review your budget. What is your target for unbillable time, right? Do you at least have that so you know if it's going too high or too short, or you're on target? And so important to build the budget first, understand your numbers. You don't have to build your budget every 3 weeks, of course, but if this is your first time doing something like this, it's just good to have that as a starting point.
Well, and to speak to that, Jason, briefly, I know we're approaching the timing of things, but I'm going to dial it in 20% unbillable, 80% billable is a good target, because what we see is an average of good companies, healthy companies that have a naturally healthy net profit is, of an 8-hour day, what is that? Then I've got 6+ hours that are billable on the job time, where I've got 1.5 hours potentially that I'm not going to be billable at. I'm travel time, cleanup at the shop, whatever that might be. If we're more than that, we're having some challenges.
Definitely.
Yep.
And so moving along, I know we're kind of short on time here, so moving along, but if it is unbillable time, maybe you've determined that your crews are taking too long getting out of the shop in the morning. So quick math, maybe your goal is 15 minutes and it's been delayed to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Hopefully, 15 minutes doesn't sound like much, but when you kind of factor a crew of 3 people, now it's 45 minutes. 5 days a week, you're almost at 4 hours there, 3 hours, 45 minutes, 45 times 5. So
Yeah.
it adds up, and that's just for one crew. So little changes like this over the course of a 3-week sprint can lead to big changes on your bottom line.
It did for us. We did something similar called a crew out of the gate, a competition where we displayed from our fleet tracking system when people left. So we had a geofence, tracked it, they left, and we got to see when each crew left the yard for that day, and we tracked it, we posted it. And then by the end of 1 week, we would assign a winner. We had kind of a large parking area where not much employee parking. We gave them a front row parking spot with their name on it with a plaque, of course, magnetic plaque we could go in and out with, but they loved it. And so we gave a winner, celebrated the winner of out of the gate. At some point, we went from a 30-minute out of the gate time to basically 7-minute out of the gate time. It was huge for us.
That's huge. Yeah, I mean, I was saying 15, but 7.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so, yeah, just going with week 2, building your plan, right? So if that one change, getting out of the gate faster is what you want to focus on, map the accountability. Who owns it? Maybe it's your ops manager. If you're not using a system like LMN where you can, create a task for the shop, clock into it, get them out there with a stopwatch. Like you don't have to make it complicated. And then if you do have something that you can use, whether it's LMN or something else, to like show people how they're performing, that part is definitely key, right? So if you can set up a saved view or a dashboard to let people know how they're progressing, makes a big difference. And then week 3 is activate and align. So again, if we're focusing on getting out of the gate, have a kickoff meeting, maybe it's Monday morning or Friday afternoon, on week 2, Friday afternoon, let your team know the why, right? Do the math, like show them, saving 20 minutes or 15 minutes per person per day across all your crews, what that can add up to. You can sell more work, reinvest that money back into the company, upgrade your equipment, pay people better living wage, whatever, however you want to kind of pitch your why. There's
Hmm.
lots of reasons that you could set there. It definitely helps people understand and get on board.
Hmm. For us, it was new blowers. We needed new blowers. It was started simple, but it could be, like you said, it translates to a lot of things.
And part of building your plan, like get feedback from the team. I mean, like they're the ones that know what's taking them long in this case to get out of the shop in the morning. Sometimes it's like the flow of the yard, right? Is your yard set up in the most efficient way, or are the tools organized, right? There's a lot. Do you have open trailers and could be using closed trailers? I mean, we could probably spend a whole webinar just on that, but you get the idea.
Hmm.
Um, and then so debrief from there, adjust and prepare the next item, right? So quick 3 weeks, and maybe in the first week of actioning your plan, you get the time down 5-10 minutes. And maybe you want to extend, do another sprint, right? Get it down even lower. So or you can tackle the next rock. So we got 4 minutes here. So just going to close out. Hopefully this has been helpful to everyone here and you've gotten some good value from this. We do have some offers going on right now that I can speak to. If you're not using LMN and are interested, lunch is on us. So we know it's hard to find a time to sit down and take a demo. If you book a demo with LMN, you can scan that QR code, lunch on us, and a special offer for McFarland clients as well who are not on Element yet. You can receive 25% off a new Element Starter Pro annual package. And I'll pass it over to you, Jason.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you. We work through helping companies. If you don't have this already in place or you feel like you need some support in here, we will come in and help you run your financials. And we do an outsourced accounting approach where we're going to give you, a set of books that is accurate, up to date, live financials daily. We help you with a balance sheet where it gives you an opportunity to have true financials daily that you can say, here's where I'm at. And then here's some decisions we can make to help us better run the business. And so our goal to help you navigate that, but also put it in play. We have 25% off to LMN users who want to come in and look at this opportunity and work through this process with us for the onboarding. The onboarding is the heavy lifting part of doing all the analysis and getting your books where they are now to where they can accurately help you on the front end, which is that's a heavy lifting, a lot of hours on the front end, a 13-week process for us. And so we want to help you do that well. And then we will have ongoing help and support, of course, that we find a lot of people will stay with, stick with, and helps them with their business.
Awesome.
And then we have one more slide, I think, we're going to show here.
And then we've got the poll too. So stick around in case you do
Please.
want more information. We've got a poll come in shortly here.
And then if you're interested in being part of a network of business owners who are working through changes in their companies, we have an ACE Discovery program that allows you to come in and participate in a peer group meeting. You'll get to see what it is, what it looks like, how it works, and the impact it can make for you. So you'll go through a meeting with us, and it gives you a chance to be able to see, I think, a lot of what this program does for the clients that we work with. And so scan this QR code. If you can join us, if you want to learn more, please answer, I guess, in this last poll. If you want to connect with us at McFarland Stanford about any of the things we've talked about, from outsourced accounting, we have this peer group program that allows you as a business owner to come in and plug into people that can help you make some decisions and make some changes with support.
Awesome. I just want to say from LMN customers that I've spoken to, I've heard nothing but great things about McFarland Stanford. So Jason, as we wrap up here, we've got the slide, but I just want to say thanks so much for hosting this webinar with me today. We've got the two Jasons. It's been a blast, and I really appreciate your expertise and joining me today.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for being here. I'm excited that you're taking the time to invest back in your career and in your business to make it better. And we, of course, want to do that for the industry and excited to help where we can. So please reach out to us for anything you need.
We landed the plane on time. Look at that. There we go. So thank you, everyone. I hope everyone has taken some information from this. Go forth, use it. Use the information we provided today. We'll be sending out an email with more information, a handout on this 3-week plan, and some follow-ups depending on your answers to the question there. So thank you, everyone, for joining, and hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Thank you, guys.